I,
All right, teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. It will continue to be the number one show on innovative teamwork. Shout out to podmatch.com again. You guys have put me in front of some incredible people. For the longest time, I had just a solo show, but now the guests are coming back on the Move Swiftly podcast, and I could not be more excited. To my regular listeners, listen, we have a gem. Again, I know I sound like a broken record when I tell you this, but we have another gem, another absolute gem of a person, because there's a lot of you out there who call yourself brand managers, or talk about how you know how to build a brand, or you know what a brand is. You know, that term brand is starting to get used very loosely in today's world. And today I have someone who is an expert on building your brand, exactly what it entails, exactly what the structure of it is. Ben, I always say, don't build up the brand, build up the man. All right, because that's exactly what it entails when it comes to really establishing what it is you want to do. So with all that, Mr. Ben Baker, founder of Your Brand Marketing, welcome to the show, man.
it is my absolute pleasure. We are going to have a lot of fun. Can't wait to hear your questions and have a conversation, and hopefully give something of value back to your audience.
Yes, because let's just jump it off right, because one of the things that I heard you say previously, and like I told you off camera, I've been listening to a lot of your work previously, is you were a great storyteller. You know, when it comes to building a brand, you have a background, I believe it's in theater and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There was an element to where you understood the power of a story and how that story is going to dictate your future and how it can communicate with people. So it might be best to just kind of start off there. Give us a little bit about your background in the theater world, and where did you understand the importance of story and things of that nature? So the floor is yours.
Well, it's always been story. From the time I was a little kid, it was always
Yes.
story. I was lucky. I was one of these lucky, fell into stuff. Things happen by accident, smack upside the back of the head, call it whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always been experiences in my life and people that have come into my life that have allowed me to learn really cool things. You're right. I mean, from the time I was probably 11 or 12, I was in professional theater, and mostly I was behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time I was doing lighting design and scene design, and all that kind of stuff, and making sure stage management, all that kind of fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually got to actually be on stage a few times.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a lot of fun too, because what the theater has always brought to me is that it allows you to escape reality,
Yeah.
and create your own reality,
Mm-hmm.
and suspend belief and realize that, what, there are different ways of looking at things. There are different worlds out there. There's different interpretations. I don't believe that we have a truth. Well, maybe there is a truth, but none of us are smart enough to believe it or understand it.
Mm-hmm.
But we all have our own experiences.
Yeah.
And we all have our own interpretation, and we all have our own way that we've experienced in life. And being able to tell those stories and say, hey, listen, I believe this, or I've seen this, or you know what, I was part of this.
Mm-hmm.
And it brings people into your world.
Right.
And that's what I love, is because that makes the world a little better. We understand each other better, and it becomes far more interesting place to be.
So when let's go back a little bit though, because when you're doing the lighting, the backstage stuff, all right, you see a perspective, especially at that age, all right, you see a
Yeah.
perspective in acting that a lot of us young people don't see. You know, when we look at acting, we look at stage, we see the play, we just see what's going on, and we see the people. And I myself, even as a grown man, I look at a certain character, I don't even know their real name, I only associate them with what I saw them on the show. What
Sure.
do you kind of see from your perspective, like when the director yelled cut and it came time for that actor to come and perform, when they had to switch roles? And that's a perspective that you just don't, it's hard for anybody to resonate with. So how did that kind of help you, just seeing
Yeah.
what it was like?
It's called breaking the fourth wall. And I've
Wow.
broken that fourth wall many times. And as you say, when you're looking at a television screen, a movie theater, a live
Mm-hmm.
play, you're seeing a three dimension. You're seeing, behind the person, you're seeing the side of the people, but that's all you're seeing. You're seeing a box,
Yeah.
and that world created within that box.
Hmm.
I'm seeing everything that happens in the wings, above, below,
Oh my God.
I'm
Yeah.
seeing, the orchestra, I'm seeing the lights hanging above, I'm seeing, people running around in the background, moving sets around, trying to figure stuff out,
Right, right.
a director saying cut. So I'm seeing more of the story and
Mhm.
how the story is being built and how it's being crafted and how it's being developed,
Right.
as well as the story itself. So you're right. I mean, that's a neat perspective, because
Mhm.
when I was a kid, one of my dad's best friends, was, I'll, for lack of a better word, he was a dog and pony man. He was the guy that went on stage and got you to buy seminars. The guys that rolled into town and said, "Hey, you two for $2,000 could be a millionaire."
Mhm.
And he was probably better at it than 99% of the people out there. And I learned how
Mhm.
he developed the story and how he engaged an audience and how he brought an audience in. And one thing that people don't realize is
Mhm.
Sam used to gray his beard a little bit. He used to walk with a little bit of a hunch, and he used to make his glasses looked a little
Right.
thicker than they needed to be. And he gave himself the appearance of being older than he was.
Wow.
Well, that, and he put what looked like a hearing aid in his ear, but what it wasn't a hearing aid, it was a tape recorder in his pocket. And he'd be listening
Huh.
to his talk
Huh.
as he's giving it. And somebody would give him a question, he would say, "You know what, that's a great question." And he'd put his hands in his pocket, think for a little bit, and go, "You know what? Let me answer that question." And then he'd answer it, and then he'd go, "You know what? That was a really good question." And then he'd go back to his talk. What was he doing? He was hitting the pause button and he was hitting the play button.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
And the world never saw that. The
Right.
world saw this extremely polished guy that was never flustered, never flapped, always on beat, always on cue,
Mhm.
and was the consummate professional.
Hmm.
But to be that professional requires not only being the professional, but living that life along with it. It's not just what you say, it's what you do.
Right.
And what you say, what you have to do, have to align, and there has to be purpose.
Hmm.
Because as Jeff Bezos says, the world is how they perceive you when you're not in the room.
Right. Now that man, that well, first of all, that's a great, great lesson. And as a person that gives workshops now, that's something I have to actually consider. But so you're young and you're getting all these lessons, right? The transition into maybe your teenage life, into your young adult life, what inspired you? How were you able to manage that, given that you have this unique perspective? I'm sure, just going to college or, kind of doing the normal thing wasn't something that was really appealing to somebody that saw that. And how were you able to manage those expectations and that transition?
Well, believe it or not, I have a degree from the University of Victoria. My degree is in political science and international relations.
Right.
I ran the computer lab. We built the first Mac lab at the University of Victoria
Hmm.
in the 1980s. But what my perspective always was
Yeah.
is that there's always something more. There's always something. When you're looking at something,
Hmm.
you need to look at the edges,
Hmm.
and you need to look for what's not being said. When somebody's saying something, the question is, what are they omitting?
Hmm.
What is their body saying that their lips aren't?
Hmm.
And that has always been, as I grew up and I started in sales and moved over to marketing and communications and branding, it allowed me to sit there and say, okay, what's the error of omission? What's not being said? What's being missed? What's being forgotten? What's being overlooked?
Hmm.
And how do we bring those to the forefront to truly be able to tell a story that's not only impactful, but it's listened to, it's understood, and it's engaged with?
Okay, so you go to school, all right, and this is really interesting. And again, guys, you guys know I keep it 1,000% organic for you on this show. This is a really, really cool element because you go to school and you major in you said political science, right?
Yeah.
And you built the computer lab, and again, you have this perspective. So immediately you get into sales, just like I did. Immediately you get into sales, and that's anybody that's been in sales knows it's a fight club. It is not for the weak heart. You're gonna get rejected.
It is not for the faint-hearted.
I'm telling you,
Absolutely
you're
not.
gonna have to come up with your fists up and ready to roll. How
You're
did
up and
your
go.
sales career go from marketing to now what it is you're doing now, where you're helping people tell their stories. Talk to us a little about the
Yeah.
lessons that you learned in your sales life.
The end of my sales life, well, the end of my sales life was I was managing $100 million account.
Mm-hmm.
I was literally up in the air. I was George Clooney.
Mm-hmm.
I had 30 staff underneath me. My job was to be up in the air and fix problems.
It
And
fixed.
I
I didn't hear.
fix problems.
Big pro. Yeah. Oh,
You
yeah.
know, so my job was to sit there and say, okay, what's going on? What's wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it going wrong? How do we fix it? Let's fix it. And how do we make everybody happy?
Mm-hmm.
And I was literally in the air 200 days a year. I was in the Million Mile Club.
Oh man.
And it was a divorce waiting to happen. And my wife and I looked at each other and I went up to my boss. I said, look, you have two choices. You can cut my travel days in half, or you could double my salary to pay for my divorce. These are your two choices. So he bought me out.
Wow.
He says, fine, you're done. And I was lucky enough playing golf to meet a guy in the direct mail business. And they were looking for somebody that had technical experience.
Mm-hmm.
And direct mail is not only about tactics, but it's about strategy. And it's about storytelling.
Yeah.
It's understanding who are you telling the story to and why do they care and
Mm-hmm.
how do you get their attention. And that was really exciting for me. And I started working with um working with casinos and started working with grocery chains. And they were very reactive. When I started working with them, they were extremely reactive. Oh my God, my competitor's doing this. We have to do this. My competitor's doing this, like that.
Mm-hmm.
And after about 6 months of working with them, I said, enough is enough. Stop.
Mm-hmm.
It's time for them to chase you. And I helped build out the brand strategy, out the marketing, out the vision
Mm-hmm.
that made them the industry leader and enabled other people to chase them. So they weren't being a commodity driven reactionary company.
Okay.
They were sitting there saying, listen, this is our true value. This is what differentiates us. This is how we help people. This is how we align with your emotions and how we enable you to feel that we care about you.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? You're going to come to us and your competitors are going to be sitting there licking their wounds and grabbing their tails.
What benefits did you see with direct mail? Nowadays, everything is digital, and I could see where that company probably was coming from in terms of I got to turn everything to a PDF and send it in an email and all that. But there's something sacred about holding something. I'll never forget back when President Obama was elected. I had family. I grew up in DC, in
Sure.
Maryland, DC area, and we all went to the inauguration. No, no, it was the night he got elected, and they wanted to buy the newspaper where that had Michelle, him, and all of them. It wasn't enough for it to be online. They wanted to actually buy the newspaper. So I'm curious, as somebody that worked in the direct mail and kind of talked to businesses about going to a direct mail strategy. What benefits do you see in terms of giving things directly to people as opposed to just shooting off an email and saying, "Oh, that's my campaign and I did my work for the day"?
Question: would you rather get an emailed birthday card that's generic and basically laissez-faire, or would you like to have somebody physically hand you something
Yeah.
and you slit open the envelope, pull the card out, read the card, and have the anticipation of that check fall out from underneath the pages?
Oh man, you just said it.
That's the essence
Yeah.
of direct mail.
Right.
It's the emotional attachment of the tactile feeling
Mhm.
and the anticipation of what else can be in the envelope. And
Huh.
it does in today's market, it's not for everybody. Direct mail is more expensive. There is no question about it.
Mhm.
However, if you have a high value, high margin business, nothing beats direct mail if you have a targeted list.
Hmm.
Here's a perfect example. This is a
Right.
number of years ago. I wasn't involved in this campaign. It's probably completely illegal, but this is beautiful. One high-end car company ended up acquiring the leasing list of another high-end car company.
Mhm.
Okay. They created a direct mail campaign that had a picture on the front. So if you had a two-door red BMW,
Mhm.
you would get a direct mail picture with a direct mail piece with a picture on the front would be a two-door red Jaguar on the front that said, wouldn't you rather be in a Jaguar? We know you're 18 months into a 24-month lease. We can help you be here.
Wow.
47% response rate.
Wow. Wow.
Was it expensive to create?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Was it an extremely targeted list? You bet it was.
Right.
But the market penetration
Yeah.
was worth millions and tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars
Yeah.
across the United States.
Right. So here's the important thing for you listeners to take away when it comes to that. All right. I really want you guys to get a hold of the extremely targeted list aspect of that story. All right. As you're going out, you're building your businesses, you're building your organizations, whether it's nonprofit, not for profit, for profit, whatever it is you're building, get clear on your list. I have a coach now too that I have worked countless hours, had countless conversations with him about making sure your list is so targeted that you just get to a point where you're only serving them. You'll do whatever it is you have to do to get to focusing on that list. Because if you start straying away and you start thinking that just what you post online is going to be your brand, and I'm going to do this brand deal with that brand deal, and there's every business has their own agenda. That if you don't have that targeted list, eventually you will stray. You will stray away, and you won't actually get anything done that you actually wanted to get done. So,
and here's the add-on to that. You don't own your social media.
No, you don't.
I don't care if you're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest. I don't care where you are.
Right.
They can be gone tomorrow. And those 175 quarter million, half million followers that you've spent years trying to acquire are gone.
Right.
And there's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
When you own your own permission-based direct mail list, whether it's actually physical mail or email or whatever it is, you own that data.
Right.
And that data is extremely popular. And it's not just name, rank, and serial number. Do you know their kids' names? Do you know what universities they went to? Do you know what their favorite restaurant is? Do you know when their birthday is? Do you know when their anniversary is? And as you build out that information, there's so many different things you could do. We did a campaign for 3 years for a casino where we sent people a birthday invitation, and they could come. You say it was in February, your birthday was in March. You got a card in February that said, come anytime in March and bring your friends. You get a free lunch, you get birthday cake, and you get, based on however much you spend, you get an equivalent, you get equivalency in chips. Your friends all get $10 in chips and they get a free piece of cake. Well, guess what? We got a 42% response rate on that on average over 3 years. Average is 3 to 5%.
Right.
And not only that, we also got players cards now for all their friends who weren't friends. And we were able to tie it back. It says this person brought this person brought this person. And then we could do even more complex marketing based on not only who you are, but why don't you bring Sally, Bob, and Diane with you when next time you come down?
Right. And it's spreading the right way. It's spreading the right way because you actually did the beneath the surface work. So you're helping out this casino, and eventually do you decide to go into business on your own, or
I was on my own at this point in time. I've been on my own for 16 years. I had a partner before that. So I mean, I've been playing the communications game for 25, 30 years now, but I went out on my own about January 2008.
2019?
2008.
2008. Okay, right. So all right, now that was around the time 2008. Facebook was just becoming a thing, I believe. There was not Instagram yet. There obviously wasn't any TikTok or anything like that. But you preach communication. You preach ways of making sure you kind of bargain yourself or put yourself in a situation where people come to you and they are improving the communication with their story and things like that. How are you able to sort of leverage that and get clients? If someone's listening in now and they want to work with you, what exactly are they going to get? How are they going to get it? How are they going to be helped, and things of that nature?
Well, my clients come to me because they are not communicating effectively. Either they're having branding issues, they're having communication issues, they're onboarding huge amounts of people because they had a merger or an acquisition.
Mhm.
They're going through change management. They're going through a whole bunch of different things. I look at sit there and say, okay, how do we tell your story? Because every company's story is different.
Mhm.
And every story needs to be told so it resonates with the audience in front of you. You're going to tell a story different to engineers than you are to lawyers, to marketers, to salespeople. Okay. Different people, you're going to get the same nuance, but you're going to use different analogies. You're going to use different mediums. You might use, some people video, some people audio, some people like, some people like the written word, some people like shorter material, some people like longer material. And it's being able, whether it's an internal audience or an external audience,
Mhm.
to understand who your clients are, where they are, and why they're there. You
Okay.
know, you might know a lot of people on Facebook. You may know an enormous amount of people on Facebook. But here's a question. Why are they on Facebook? Are they on Facebook because they want to talk to their grandmothers? Or are they on Facebook because they actually are want to do business with people and hear from people in a business arrangement? You
Mhm.
know, your conversation on LinkedIn is going to be different from it is on Facebook. It's different from X. It's going to be different on Instagram. It's going to be different on TikTok.
Right.
It's different audiences that digest information differently.
Mhm.
And it's making sure that all those aspects of that story are congruent and they all push back to your website,
Mhm.
because that's the repository. What you want to do is you want to push people to one common location. And when
Okay.
you push people to one common location, then you can get them on your newsletter list. Then you can get them to participate in your calls to action. You can get them to buy your courses. You can get them to buy your product. You can do whatever you want.
Mhm.
The social media is the know, like, and trust. Oh, I like Ben. I like what he has to say. Let's see what else he has to say. Oh, let's go to his website and find out what he really does.
So when you're getting people to get clear on their story, what have you ever encountered the challenging aspect? Like, what are the challenging aspects to it? Because I can, as you're talking, I can see people who are maybe just working for the money, or they're doing whatever their job is for a check, and they have no idea what the story is. They're just they're doing whatever it is they're doing for a check, or they kind of been in a situation where they have the money, they do whatever, but they don't know what the story is. What are the ways? How are you challenging them to get to know it, and how are you able to, maybe even if you got to say, look, I can't work with you because you don't know the story. What exactly do you do to maneuver
Yeah.
that challenge?
As we become more sophisticated with businesses, we have a more sophisticated story.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We have more experience. We have more tapestry. We have more examples that we can give. But every company has a story. Every person has a story. Where did we come from? Where are we today? What brought us from there to here? What's important to us and why? And where are we going? That's your story.
Mm-hmm.
That's your story. In its essence, that's what your story. It's not, I was born, I turned 18, I made $10 million, and now I'm retired on a beach somewhere. Nobody cares.
Mm-hmm.
People want to know the tapestry. They want to know what happened. How did it happen? What were the pitfalls along the way? What did you learn from the pitfalls?
Mm-hmm.
And it's being able to draw that out of people. And you're right. Some people just are very uncomfortable telling their story. Some people don't want to give a lot of information. A story doesn't have to be this grandiose thing that takes you 30 minutes to create. You can tell a story of who you are, what you do, and why you do it in a minute and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And then you sit there and say, if the people are truly interested, they'll ask more questions.
Right.
You know, sometimes less is more.
Mm-hmm.
A story is to give the overall arch and invite people into a conversation. It's not to give all the hay in the barn.
Right. And it's really important, because I remember that, man, you're taking me back to when I was when I was a young middle school football player, and we had a camp, and there was a guest speaker that came twice. Actually, I went to two camps. He came twice, and he said a man is much more than the company he owns, or something like that. And he was telling us, basically what he was telling us is, you as an individual, I'm speaking to you as a listener, you personally have a story and you have a reason that you're doing your job, whatever the job may be. It may be, I don't care if you're working at some 7-Eleven somewhere, that check every 2 weeks may be going to keep your light, to keep your daughter's shoes right, to keep school fees, whatever it is. Get clued in to what exactly the money is going to be going to, and then you'll start to see yourself, developing with this company. I can talk to you for hours, and I have on this show talked to you for hours upon hours about companies and jobs I've taken that paid me crap, paid me nothing, but I felt so connected to the brand that I continue to show up day in and day out. And that's what built this podcast. That's what built the platform that I speak to you guys on every single day. So the question now becomes for you, Ben, is when you're dealing with folks that are I guess a bit timid, or they don't know
Yeah,
where to go, or where like they could be working wherever, like I don't even know I have that power. What does your brand marketing do to kind of show them that they are mad, they do matter, that they do have a voice, that they do have somewhere
exactly.
where they can go? What do you advise
Yeah.
people to do when it comes to that?
A good place I start is I give away far more copies of my book than I sell. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the book is the first book I have is 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Today, it becomes part of my consulting. When you do consulting work with me, you get a copy of my book. Trust
Okay.
me, you're paying far more for the consulting than the copy of the book. So I'm happy to mail it to you. But it's what it is. It's called Powerful Personal Brands: A Hands-On Guide to Understanding Yours.
Right.
And I wrote this for university students originally because I mentor up at the universities and I teach them about interview skills, about personal branding, about how to present themselves, how to communicate more effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And most of these people are really, really smart and can't articulate their why.
Yeah.
And I couldn't
Oh man.
find a book that I really loved on this subject. So
Mm-hmm.
I wrote one.
Yes.
And is it the definitive book? I'd like to say it is. Probably, I let other people say whether it is or it isn't. I know
Mm-hmm.
I'm in love with it because I wrote it.
Oh,
But
too. Yeah.
but what it is it's a workbook where I tell stories, and at the end of each chapter, I ask a question or a series of questions and give 3 or 4 pages of blank space for people to write their own answers.
Mm-hmm.
And developing your brand is it's not a one and done thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not something that you do ad hoc or in a hurry. You
Mm-hmm.
have to sit down and you have to be a little uncomfortable with yourself and say, who am I really? Not who I want to be someday, somewhere in the far future. That's important.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a matter of sitting there going, here's who I am today, warts and all.
Mm-hmm.
This is where I want to be. Okay, now what do I need to do to bridge the gap? Who do I need to meet? What do I need to learn? What shitty jobs do I need to go through
Mm-hmm.
in order to gain the experience and the expertise and the relationships in order to be able to be successful moving forward? It's realizing that a brand is done purposely, and it's not just what you say, it's not what you put online, it's what people say about you when you're not in the room. And
Right.
that's how you act. And if you're not acting the same way in person and online, and you're not saying the same things on person and online, and if you're not, if you're
Right.
not somebody that lives their brand,
Mm-hmm.
nobody will believe it.
Okay, so I wanna do some role play now, because now
Sure.
you really got my you got my the wheels turning. I'm in that nowadays. I'm in that college room, and I say, hey, Mr. Baker, I have 2 million followers on my Instagram account. I have a bunch of brand deals hitting me up in my DMs trying to do deals with me. Are you telling me I don't have a brand? Like, what exactly are you telling me in terms of how I manage this kind of traffic that I get with this plastic device that I have right here? What do you
Yeah.
tell the young kids now that think they have a brand just because of their social media following?
My question to you is, what's your engagement like? When you post something,
Uh-huh.
how many people comment on your post? If you have 2 million followers
Mm-hmm.
and you get 20 posts or 20, 20 comments in a thing, you don't have 2 million followers.
Right.
You have a whole bunch of people hanging on that are paying just as much attention to you as they are another 1,000 people.
Mm.
They might have liked some corny video that you did
Mm-hmm.
once. Boom, they hit the follow button. Followers does not mean influence.
Hmm.
Creation of followers are an engage is a series of engagement. Is you measure your brand by your level of engagement. If you tell your 2 million followers to buy this stock
Yeah.
and 50,000 people buy that stock, you've got a brand.
Mm-hmm.
Because those 50,000 people know, like, and trust you enough
Mm-hmm.
to go out and buy that stock, right or wrong.
Right.
And hopefully you've showed them that you have real expertise in picking stocks and you understand the market, da 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
But if all you do is put cat videos online or the equivalent thereof,
Mm-hmm.
and people are just liking your funny videos,
Mm-hmm.
you got a whole bunch of people like your funny videos.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that they like you.
Right. And I mean, you just taught me something. You just shocked me because you made the distinction between engagement and followers. So again, to that person that has 2 million followers, and you may be listening to me now that has 2 million followers, you can post stuff all day without people commenting and giving you, I guess, feedback or, just saying something. You don't really know what to do with your next post because you don't know exactly how people are engaging and they're just hitting a like button. And you get a shot of dopamine when you see that like button, but it's not doesn't mean you're progressing. I use the quote quite a bit on this show. John Wooden once said, "Don't mistake activity for achievement. You're not actually
Exactly.
achieving anything just because you may have a ton of likes. It's the engagement. What journey are you taking people on?" And this is something that I can talk for hours upon hours about because it is very important when we're in this world where social media is not going nowhere. AI is only becoming more comprehensive. It's only going to lead to a world where we're all going to be connected. If you don't have your shit together and figuring out exactly what your story is, you will be swallowed alive. You'll be eaten alive because everybody is moving in this direction, that direction, and you ain't gonna know what to do. So, with all that, I do want to be very respectful of your time, Ben. Can you just please tell people, what's next, what they can do to work with you, what is some of
Yeah.
the steps, go ahead. The floor is yours to kind of plug away.
Yeah.
I
My
think you have
ideal
a podcast too, right?
Yeah, well, I've got a bunch of podcasts, but none of them are ones you're ever going to hear of or ever going to see because we do a lot of podcasts for our clients and do all the strategy work behind them.
Oh yeah, do it for them. I got you. Good.
Exactly. So we're in the background. Sometimes I'm on the mic, but that's neither here nor there.
Mm-hmm.
What I do is I work with mid to large size companies to sit there and say, how do we help you tell your story more effectively? It's
Mm-hmm.
really that simple. The best way to get in touch with me, the best way to find out more about me is to go to yourbrandmarketing.com.
Mm-hmm.
If you go, there's a bunch of material there. There's free material to look at. There's a
Mm-hmm.
whole bunch of free ebooks. There's interviews that I've done with various people. My consulting page is out there. Our internal podcasts are there. Our mini podcast program is there. Everything is there. It'll push you to my social media.
Mm-hmm.
It's a one-stop repository. So it's yourbrandmarketing.com. And, call me up and have a 30-minute conversation with me. And let's see if we can help you take you from where you are to where you want to be. And we take a look at internal communication, external communication, brand development, and how do you tell your story across mediums and across channels
Mm-hmm.
to be able to make sure you're effective.
Oh man, yeah. So it's yourbrandmarketing.com. That will also be included in the show notes as well. So Ben, the final thing I do with all the shows, the way I close out all the shows, is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You are, let's say, 13 years old. You have, I believe you said it was your uncle. He's telling you these tactics about how he's, speaking to people. He's giving you these strategies. You got a show that you got to do the lighting for, all that. I want you to pretend that young man has just come into the Zoom room. Just give him some words of encouragement, a little bit about what life is going to be like, and then we'll officially close with that.
I'll tell him the same thing I tell every young person. Youth is on your side.
Mm,
Learn, make mistakes, be humble, learn from other people, realize that you don't know everything, and be willing to sit there and say, you know what, I'm willing to try this. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to learn from it.
Right.
Because you have lots and lots of time to make mistakes. You don't need to know what you're going to do the rest of your life at 18. You know, I barely knew what I wanted to do at 50. And I look at there and sit there and go, okay, money is one thing, reputation is completely different. Reputation is what's going to drive you for the rest of your life.
Wow. That was lovely, man. All right, that was great. Well, again, appreciate you coming on. This has been fantastic. And I told you, as I promised, you're going to get a clear masterclass on exactly what building a brand is all about. And it's like I always tell you, stop thinking of building a brand, start building the man, building the person, building the way to continuously tell your story over and over again. You can't tell your story once. You got to tell your story every single day, multiple times a day, and be ready to do it at every single stop in every single point in life. All right. With all that, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.
Thanks for having me, Aswan.